Welcome back to Unlocking Security, the show where we explore the technologies, strategies, and stories shaping building security. I'm Jake Taylor, and today we're talking about something almost every building has, but very few get right: video surveillance. Now, when most people think about security cameras, they think, let's just add more cameras. But here's the reality: more cameras does not mean better security. In fact, I've walked into buildings with 50 plus cameras and still couldn't find usable footage when something actually happened. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what video surveillance is really for, how systems are actually used, camera types and placement, storage options, and the biggest mistakes that I see in the field. So first, what video surveillance is actually for. At a high level, video surveillance serves two main purposes: deterrence and evidence. Cameras can discourage bad behavior, but the real value comes after something happens. When there's a theft, a break-in, or even just a dispute, you need to be able to go back and answer one question: what actually happened? And if your footage is blurry, missing, or hard to find, that system failed. Now to talk about live monitoring versus reality. A lot of people imagine someone sitting in a room watching cameras all day, but in reality, most buildings are not actively monitored, which means your system is primarily used for reviewing footage after an incident, pulling clips for reports or investigations, and verifying events to see if things actually happened. So your system needs to be optimized for clarity, reliability, and searchability. If it takes 20 minutes or longer to find footage, people are going to stop using it. Now I'd like to talk briefly about the different camera types. This is going to be a very simplified version. I do plan to get much deeper into this in future episodes. But to break it down quickly, dome cameras are good for indoor use. They offer wide coverage and are more discreet. Bullet cameras are typically used outdoors. They're more visible, which is good for deterrence. PTZ cameras, PTZ stands for pan, tilt, zoom. These are great in theory, but are only really effective if someone is actively controlling them. You can set these a lot of times to be on like an automatic, kind of like a tour where it will follow like a sort of move in a certain pattern on like a schedule. But again, these are mostly effective when you have someone that's actually actively watching and controlling the PTZ function. And lastly, fisheye cameras. These cover a large area with one camera, but can lose detail at the edges. The key is this: to choose cameras based on what you need to capture, not just for the amount of coverage you get. When it comes to video surveillance and cameras, placement is everything. This is the biggest mistake I see. People focus on how many cameras do we need instead of what do we actually need to see. Here's where cameras matter most: entry and exit points, so you can see who's coming and going; reception areas, so you can see where people are most likely to interact; loading docks, where you can see equipment and things that are coming and going from a property; and high-value rooms like data closets or storage. And most importantly, you want to capture faces, not the tops of heads. That means having cameras at the proper height, proper angle, and utilizing proper lighting. Lighting alone can make or break a system. Now, this is another thing that I'd like to get much deeper into in another episode, but I do want to touch on it briefly, and that is cloud versus local storage. You have two main options. Local storage means it's stored on site. There's no recurring fees for the storage of the video, and you oftentimes have more control. Whereas cloud gets you remote access. It's much easier to manage, and the storage is typically on a subscription-based model. I'm seeing a lot of hybrid systems where the video footage is actually stored on site, but access to the video is done through the cloud, and the storage long-term of video is also done through the cloud. This is a trend that I think we're going to see continue as people look to get technology out of their data closets and into the cloud where they can access them through a browser. So here are some common mistakes that I see when it comes to video surveillance. These are just some of the biggest ones. There's a lot out there, but these are just a few that I wanted to touch on. Cameras pointed at nothing important. Too often I see cameras that are mounted and installed, but they're not actually aimed where they need to be, whether that's because of over time they had changed or what. The fact that they are allowed to get to a point where they're not looking at what they need to be looking at is a concern. Poor lighting. It's great to capture the footage of a person walking, but if the sun produces a glare that doesn't allow you to see any defining features, that's a problem. Not having remote access. I understand a long time, in the past that has not always been an option, but now it's pretty much baked into any solution in some way or another. So not having a remote access into cameras is a big misstep that I'm seeing. And then not maintaining the cameras. Too often I see a camera gets installed and then it's not touched for 10 years. Unless it stops working, it might get service. But too often these cameras are not being cleaned or maintained in a way that allows them to operate for as long as they're designed to. And then lastly would be systems that are not integrated. Having a separate video surveillance system from an access control system, from your intrusion system. Again, there's just too many solutions out there for it to make sense to not have those systems working together, in the same place. And a bonus mistake that I actually just thought of would be not having alerts set up or a way to be alerted when a camera loses connectivity. This is a major problem that I'm seeing where I'll go to sites where I'll see cameras that have been offline for months, and the customer just had no idea that their camera wasn't working. A real example of all of this for you, I worked on a building that had over 40 cameras, but none of them were positioned at entry points. So when an incident did happen, we had zero useful footage. We have since redesigned the system with fewer cameras, but better placement, because that's what matters. And now for a final thought on video surveillance. I do plan to release many more episodes about video surveillance, so this was intended to be kind of an overview of the different aspects of a video surveillance system. But to wrap up this episode, video surveillance is not about recording everything. It's about capturing the right moments clearly when they matter most. In the next episode, we're going to be diving into intrusion detection systems. So I'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please give me a subscription or a follow wherever you're listening. And also please drop a comment or send me a message letting me know your thoughts. I really do want this show to be educational. So if there's anything specific that you'd like to learn about or hear about or get my thoughts on, please let me know. Until next time, stay safe.